first chapter, just a couple of verses in which it describes Jesus and his own baptism. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John the Baptist in the Jordan. And just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove upon him. A voice from heaven came and said, "You are my Son, the Beloved. With you I am well pleased." So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thanks be to God.
I've come to believe that God likes to play in water. God enjoys water probably just as much as I do. You go back through the story of our faith, you can see all kinds of instances of this. There was the big flood, and there was the parting of the Red Sea, the time that water flowed from the rock in the desert, that wondrous trick of turning water into wine, and then the fascination that God seems to have had over the eons with people taking baths, known as baptisms. And I guess I can understand God's fascination. Water is so powerful. When it flows in a river, it can wear away rock. When it flows from someone's eyes, it can open a heart. When it falls from heaven, it can close roads. And if it's cold enough, it can close schools too and open Bristol Mountain. I remember a time, I'm old enough to recall the flood of 72 here in the East, a time when we had way too much of a good thing. So much of a good thing that television sets were floating in living rooms. New York State's smallest state park, Squaw Island, became smaller. And from the entirely selfish standpoint of a school kid, my only complaint was that school was already out for the summer. What a waste of a good flood. In a more serious vein, water has brought about tragic displacement, as we all know, devastation, even just in the last year. And yet, for all its destructive power, it remains an elemental component of our very bodies. And so it demands our deepest respect. Baptism, as we practice it here in this church, the United Church of Bristol, and in most churches within the United Church of Christ, is a much drier affair than in some other churches. We sprinkle or dab ever so gently, often in a very dry, forced air sanctuary where half the moisture probably evaporates before it hits the little tyke's head. And I think in some respects we lose a bit with that relatively drier practice. Lose some of the fun, and maybe lose some of the potential for new members. I'll explain that in a minute. I remember one hot June day years ago, loitering near the fence of the neighbor woman's in-ground swimming pool, hoping that she'd spy me and invite me in to take a dip. I was very unobtrusive and subtle, standing there just outside the fence wearing my bathing suit and holding a towel. I just raise it up because it's another instance, we've all had them, when there is a tremendous attraction to water. In the summer, and even in the winter. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, a nice, maybe right here, big, heated, baptismal pool, maintained at a luxurious 95 degrees, available for baptism all winter. And picture, again, if you will, our church sign out front. Come one, come all, give your life to Christ and give your body a break. Lifeguards are standing by. There is something so much more immersive about a full body baptism. I think it's very symbolic, powerfully so. John the Baptist wasn't calling folks out into the wilderness to dip a toe in Christ, like some tentative spiritual scratch and sniff. He was inviting folks to come out step up and really jump in. But even with us, even if our sprinkling is a bit light on water, our vows are not. We don't mince words when we speak of renouncing the powers of evil, resisting oppression, showing love and justice, and witnessing to Christ. There's nothing tentative or partial about those words. And frankly, we'd have to be insane to dive into all that if we were left to our own devices. But we're not. Just like the lifeguard standing by. We do this with God, who guards our life, as the psalmist says. And we do it with the support of each other. To be sure, some of our brothers and sisters in the larger body of Christ may differ as to the practice of baptism. And unfortunately, on this point, disagreements do occasionally crop up. Case in point, Jane was raised a Methodist, but she started attending a Baptist church when she moved into the community. One day, she was helping a group of church women clean the church kitchen. She emptied the large electric coffee pot and handed it to the woman that was washing the dishes. The woman washing the dishes asked, "Can this be washed like everything else?" "No," Jan replied, "this is a Methodist coffee pot. It says right here, do not immerse." But these little squabbles are relatively minor. What really matters the most is that each time one of these little ones like Bo, or a bigger one, takes the plunge into the life of Christ, you and I, the witnesses, are willing to jump in right alongside and get wet all over again. For the sake of Christ, for the sake of Bo, and all the others, and for the sake of the world. So as the expression goes, come on in, the water's great. And so is our God.